All right.
Okay. Good
Well,
morning.
let's go ahead and allow people to
Oh,
come.
so I don't have to start yet. You'll tell me when to start. There they go. 300, 400.
Okay, looks like we've settled in to about, well, 500 people, which is our max license number, actually. So we can't take any more than 500. So let's go ahead and start.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Crumpy. I'm the Chief Academic Officer. Thank you so much for meeting with us this morning. This meeting is being recorded, so families that were not able to participate will be able to watch it at their leisure and watch as much of it as they would like. We're going to present today for about 30 minutes. We've tried very hard to take the hundreds and hundreds of questions, so thank you, that we've received and try to put them into a presentation. And then we're going to take up to an hour of questions. We do have a hard stop today at 11:30. And we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible ahead of this Monday's meeting. Monday, July 13th, our board will be meeting to hopefully vote on the models that we will be using. And then you will be getting information out next Wednesday. And this is going to be on a timeline, actually on a slide. Our plan is to also meet next Thursday. And so after you have received, some written information from us next Wednesday and have had time to read through it, our plan is to offer the same session next Thursday so that we can again answer questions and questions that you have ahead of you making a decision on which model you want to choose from for your children. So with that, before we get started, I'd like to introduce Dr. Stowe, our superintendent. Would you like to say a few words of welcome for us?
Yes, thank you, Katie. And thank you to the panelists here and the parents. As a parent of 2 students myself in Torrance schools, I share a lot of the same questions that you have. And just want to thank you all for being here today, for taking the time. This will not be the only session, and I know some of you have been on with not only our employee sessions in the last couple of days, but the board meeting yesterday afternoon, and then also today. I know that we are kind of at our max as far as our attendees, but we will make sure that the recording gets sent out so that everybody can participate. And as always, we are available via email, to be able to answer questions and things like that. So I just want to be allowed maximum time to answer questions and give a little presentation. But again, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we can get you the information you need to make the best decision for your child possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. Okay, Mr. Mara, we're ready for you to share screen and start our presentation.
If you can give me a second, I've got to add Tammy, Mr. Gerson, Ms. Reagans as panelists because
Okay.
they're a little stuck.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let me share my screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Some of you have probably seen this before. I don't know if any one of you want to speak to the vision and our guiding principles on this, Dr. Stowe or?
Well, I mean, it's there. It's been on all of our meetings. I think we keep it there to ensure that everyone knows that we're, using this vision and guiding principles to keep in mind for every decision that we're making about what's best for our kids.
Okay. And for those that don't know, our task force is broken up into these 5 subcommittees here: instruction, family and community engagement, social and emotional support, human resources, health and safety, and operations. And I am the chair of operations. So I'll be discussing operations. One of the subcommittees in operations is nutrition. So ensuring that our students who qualify get their meals. Fortunately, the USDA has provided the waivers to extend flexibility for the instructional models that we decide to go with, which we hopefully will get a decision next week. We're preparing all of our dining areas so that the students can eat safely, right, in social distance settings. So each of the sites are working with our Director of Nutrition Services to identify the spaces and how the flow of traffic in the cafeterias or the eating areas will comply with social distancing. And then serving individually wrapped meals, right? A lot of those will be grab and go again to prevent any cross-contamination between foods or food items. Adjusting lunch schedules if necessary. So we're working hard on that. Whether or not, again, that's really dependent on the instructional model that you're going to hear about later on from Dr. Crumpy. But the lunch schedules need to adjust based on our instructional models. And if the AB model is selected, we'll have to add more point of sale stations in our schools so that, again, we can keep the social distancing between the students in play. Now, a lot of questions regarding cleaning and disinfecting. We expect guidelines to come out from the county office, hopefully tomorrow or early next week. But what's consistent between guidelines from a lot of other different county offices and even the CDC is, you want to intensify your cleaning and disinfecting of your schools and your campuses. There are EPA approved disinfectants that we have in stock here in our warehouse and that the schools have access to. Here you see a picture of a custodian who is using one of our new electrostatic cleaners to spray the biocide, right, the germicide on our surfaces here to disinfect our campuses. It's highly recommended that our campuses are disinfected at least once a day, right? And that's a very deep cleaning of the campuses because it'll take about 5 to 7 minutes to do every classroom. And you have to put the disinfectant on, and there's a certain dwell time, right? So you have to let the disinfectant sit there in order for it to be the most effective to kill that 99.9% of the germs that are on the surfaces. So we're developing these cleaning protocols to ensure that we can get this disinfecting done at the very least once a day. And we want to hit, and throughout the day, you want the cleaning, right? So not using a disinfectant, you can use other cleaning agents. Remember, the difference between a disinfectant and a regular cleaning agent is a disinfectant is regulated by the Department of Pesticide. So the DPR, this Department of Pesticide Regulation. So only folks trained in the use of disinfectants may use a disinfectant in the classroom. However, most of the faculty and staff can use regular cleaning agents to do sanitation and cleaning regularly throughout the school. And it's the custodial staff that's trained to use disinfectants that will be tasked with really hitting those high-touch surface areas as much as possible, like the light switches, the tables, and the doorknobs, phones, and things like that. The same goes for the buses, as we'll have a lot of transportation needs. Well, we always have transportation needs, but the social distancing also applies to transporting the students. So they'll sit every other seat, right? Again, providing the spacing. And we also have to do the disinfecting and the cleaning in our fleet. Communal spaces, right? Same thing. Need to do all the cleaning and disinfecting in those, and limiting the amount of shared objects and equipment between students. So if you have equipment that is being shared by students, again, you want to try and clean and disinfect as much as possible before, let's say, a Chromebook gets used by another cohort of students. So to accomplish all of this, right, we need to modify our custodial schedules and intensify the cleaning between cohorts as much as possible, and possibly increase staffing. That's something that has to be explored. We believe that, based on the protocols that we're outlining and additional training and help, we may not need to increase our staffing, but again, that has to be explored and looked at in a little further, right? It's a lot of timing when it comes to how often we can get throughout an entire campus with the number of people and resources we have. This is just an example here when I'm talking about the difference between a disinfectant and hand sanitizer or just regular soap, right? HSA is the Healthy Schools Act. So that's where the requirement is when it comes to getting a certificate and being trained in using a disinfectant like a Clorox wipe. You need to be trained in using a Clorox wipe. It sounds funny, but it is a pesticide. It's a regulated product, right? So you can't just hand those out. So we are going to encourage most of our faculty and staff to take the 20-minute course online so that they can get their certificate, and they will be able to use some disinfectants on their own without having to employ a lot of custodial staff. Okay. Now, in our facilities, we're hard at work in setting up our classrooms and workspaces to ensure that there is 6-foot spacing between faculty, staff, and students, right? So the desks are being moved around. We've emptied a lot of non-essential furniture inside of every classroom, and have marked off spaces between the students and the teacher to give that 6-foot spacing. And as cohorts of students go from, for example, AM to PM, a student will sit on one side on the AM and will sit on another side of the table during the PM, right? So a lot of training for the students, and we're pretty confident that the teachers can instill on the students, these new behaviors and tasks that the students will have to learn. We've been forming these plexiglass barriers inside our own warehouse here in our shop, and we'll be installing plexiglass barriers in our front office spaces, areas where even our office staff have to work within 6 feet of each other. So the barrier adds another protection. And sometimes you need plexiglass because some of our folks need to work with our students one-on-one for a good length of time, longer than 10 or 15 minutes. And it could be for a good length of time. So therefore this kind of barrier provides more protection for the teacher and the students. We're also installing signage so that we can give the visual guides as far as path of travel and where students should move within the school, so that you don't have bottlenecks and groupings of students that would cause so that students aren't within 6 feet of each other. So the signage is going up, and that'll be happening in the next few weeks. And again, establishing ingress and egress, entry points, exit points through the schools, identifying pathways. And this other bullet, identify isolation areas. So this is really key when it comes to determining whether or not a person is ill or sick and what you will do with that person. So if a student comes to the health office and if they're just there because they have a scraped knee, you'll deal with that student in one part of the school. However, if you have someone that's exhibiting signs of illness that may be related to COVID-19, then you want to isolate that person quickly and then engage in all of the health protocols that are needed to take care of that situation. 18% of our schools have air conditioning. So we're looking to adjust our HVAC and ventilation. Most of our schools don't have AC. So in those cases, we're wanting to open up windows and doors to allow for fresh air to come in and out. HVACs work really well because those do allow 20% of fresh air to come in, and then some of the air is recirculated inside the classroom. So we're looking at our engineering controls around HVAC. We change our filters 3 times a year, so those will be changed out again in August. It's been decided that the hand air dryers in the bathrooms need to be removed. Most of them don't work well anyway, and we want to reduce that type of air circulation inside of the bathroom. So we'll be actually switching to another manufacturer called Waxy Supply, and Waxy will be coming in and installing paper towels and new cleaning and providing new cleaning supplies for our schools. A big recommendation that we've seen in some guidelines is to disallow the use of drinking fountains. Again, it's another touch point in an area that would need to be cleaned a lot. Maintenance and operations is looking at installing bottle filling stations to provide water for folks on campus. So that contract is being looked at. We're purchasing several touchless sanitation stations. Those are the hand sanitizing stations that I'm sure you've seen used before, where you place your hand underneath and it gives you a squirt of sanitizing liquid. And also looking at touchless soap dispensers. These last 2 items have been difficult to procure, but we're trying really hard. As you can imagine, those things have been really popular nationwide. So the supply line has been running short, but we're trying to get a hold of these items. And of course, making sure that our classrooms have all the things that you need: tissue, paper towels, and starting all the classrooms off with a good amount of hand sanitizer in each of the classrooms. So there's a lot to be done on the facility side, and we continue. And I'm gonna turn it over to
Me. So
Dr.
I'm gonna,
Crumpy.
so I'm gonna quickly go through some of the questions around the other 4 committees with health and safety. And we just need to say it, we're gonna continue to use the guidelines that we have now from the state of California, and we are expecting our orders from the LA County of Public Health. And we've been expecting them. We hear that we may get them at the end of this week. It might be next week. So everything that we're talking about is based on the information that we know today. And that could change, in just a couple of hours. So there are a lot of things and a lot of questions that I think the answer is we just don't know yet. We have to wait for what guidance we're getting from the Department of Public Health. Go back, please. To health and safety, continue to use. Back. Thank you. There were one more. What are you doing?
I think there's a lag.
Oh, okay. There were a number of questions about face coverings, and we absolutely are abiding by the governor's order at this time. We expect that the Department of Public Health order is that we are requiring face coverings for all. It's a requirement. There were even questions about what about, parents walking their kids to school. At this time, that requires a face mask. If you are out away, where you're going to come within 6 feet of anybody else, anybody is required to have a mask, and we're going to abide by those orders for the safety of our faculty and staff and our students. So face coverings will be worn. Our hugest recommendation is that is that you start working with your children now. Most of them are reporting to us that, you know, when they are expecting their kids to wear masks as they're out and about, that kids are getting used to them. We don't know exactly what guidance we're going to get about the type of face coverings. We will be giving everybody a cloth face covering. You will be permitted to, we believe you will be permitted to use your own, but there might be guidance on what that is. For example, I'm not sure whether it's going to be permissible that you can wear the mask with the vent in it. We do know, we've seen recommendations that the 3 layered, you know, masks are the safest. That would be our recommendation. But right now we are going to adhere to the rules. We're going to monitor. We're going to make sure that that happens. And you know, as not even as best we can do, we are going to make sure that the rules are followed for the safety of our students and employees at work. Screening at this time, our recommendation is that we utilize a passive screening, meaning that everybody will self-screen. Families will ask to screen their kids and take their temperatures before they leave for home in the morning. Staff will do the same thing. If there is a need for you know, a screening at school, we will absolutely do that. But we're not going to be, our recommendation at this time is that we will be asking families to do that screening at home before they bring their kids to school. You heard Mr. Mara talk about schools will be doing a lot of these plans. So our goal is that as soon as we receive the LA County public orders, we are working on our draft for school reopenings, that schools will be the ones responsible. So much of this is site specific. And so as soon as we can turn this over to our school principals, they're ready. They've been working on a lot of things already, and they will be able to better tell you exactly how it's going to look like at your school. But they will be coming up with plans of how kids arrive, so they're not congregating, how kids will be dismissed, passing periods, you know, one way. I know one of our high schools is looking at their staircases, and one might be an up staircase and another one might be a down staircase. We need to minimize the socialization in the hallways as much as possible, and not have people passing each other in close proximity. And so that is being looked at. We are expecting very little visitor access at this time. There were questions about, can I walk my kids into school? No, not at this time. You'll be saying goodbye to them as they enter school at that gate, wherever they enter. And I'm going to talk about later, as you know, as things get better and improve and we loosen up, we may be able to, you know, loosen up those guidelines. Next slide, Gil. Mr. Mora talked a lot about that. I'm going to skip that next bullet. There is a lot of overlap between these two committees, as you will see, the operations and then the health and safety. So I'm going to skip that next piece. And he also talked about, you know, how are we doing risk management? And there are a lot of questions about PPE and first aid. And I know Mr. Mara mentioned, so that our plan is that there will be a separate area, so kids can go in and get ice and get a Band-Aid and not be at risk if there's somebody that is ill in the same space. So that will be separate spaces at each school. And you know, there are different situations at school. There are special education students that may have different health needs. If there's somebody in a classroom that has an aide, a paraprofessional working with them, they will be given additional PPE, you know, to work with depending on those circumstances. Those are really specific to some of our special education classrooms. And probably the biggest thing that we cannot really talk about right now is what is all this. There were a lot of questions, and so I apologize, but we don't know what the guidance is going to be about contact tracing. But except that says yes. But what's going to happen as far as a class if somebody's in contact, or whether that somebody gets becomes infected, and then what that's going to do. We just don't know yet, and have to wait for the orders of whether we have to quarantine a class, close a school, close an office building. A lot of it will depend on, we're hearing that if people are staying with masks on 6 feet away, then that risk, even if you came into contact with somebody that tests positive for COVID-19, your risk is very, very low. So there were a lot of questions on that maybe next Thursday we'll be able to answer once we get the health orders. Gil, next. Family and community engagement. There weren't as many questions here, but there were a lot of questions about can you post things on the website? And I really encourage you to go on to our TUSD website, and I think it's /parents. We have a COVID-19 information where we have links posted to the current guidance from a lot of different places. We also have parent resource information that has our FAQ and our infographics. We've sent those out in an email, but then we have the FAQs posted for your review. So Tammy Kahn, our communications officer, is updating that often on a daily basis. Lots of questions about childcare, and we really understand that. And we're working with the YMCA and the City of Torrance, and I know especially working with the YMCA, they really are committed to helping. We need those orders, and we need to see what they're going to be permitted to do, so that we can come up with childcare options for our families. There is a presentation about resources. It's on the website. I think Tammy Kahn has also pushed this out onto our social media as well. Next Wednesday, there's a live session that our parent support person, Nancy Gutierrez, is going to running an offering. So I encourage you to participate in that parent resource and help session as well. Next. Also, a few questions about social, emotional, and support systems. And a lot of this maybe will make more sense as we get into the instructional models, but we are working hard that regardless of what option you choose for your child, whether you want them to remain at home and do distance learning, or you want them to return to school, that we're going to have them connected to their school. And so there really are, schools are working on those. If you choose distance learning and there are school activities that we're allowed to have, your child is absolutely allowed to participate in those activities at your comfort level. They will be connected to your school. How that all happens, but especially as we reopen schools in August, there was a question like, well, what about the flag salute? Well, we're not going to be able to have a flag salute outdoors with people attending school. So it makes sense that a lot of those things will happen kind of synchronously, whether you're in the classroom or whether you're at home. And those opportunities will exist via the school site. We also are really working on how we will emphasize our learning and wellness training that we do in our schools. We use something in K-8. We use a curriculum called Second Step. Our counselors provide that. They are raring to go to help kids with that social emotional wellness curriculum and sessions. We are anticipating utilizing a mental health screening question so that we see what the students' state of mind is as they return to school. And school counselors are going to be available, and our mental health counselors, regardless of the model chosen. So if you are in needing of support, or your student is in need of support and you are doing distance learning, you have just as much contact and access to the school counselor as a student that would be at school. Next, go. Okay, so here's the instruction stuff. The draft timeline, as you see, the board we have a board meeting next Monday night. It is our hope then that Tuesday we madly finalize the communications out to parents. We have the translations done so that next Wednesday you receive the reopening guidelines out via email to you. Parents are going to be asked to review those guidelines, and it is a short turnaround. Our recommendation is that our blended learning option that I'm going to talk about in an upcoming slide is everybody will be in that model unless you opt in and you choose distance learning. So look for that information next Wednesday. Monday the 20th is the distance learning choice deadline. So if you're going to choose distance learning, that's your deadline by 5 o'clock on the 20th. That allows not a lot of time actually for sites to redesign their master schedules and their class lists. It's a really short turnaround time, but we need to do it because there are then ending date here, Monday, August 10th, is when families will receive that cohort notification. Whether it would be, and depending on the board's decision on Monday night, what cohort will your child be in? Would it, and that gives you about 2.5 weeks before school starts. So it's tight. And we may be doing a lot of this ahead of some of this guidance, but wanted to put that deadline out for you. We will communicate, schools will be communicating between the 15th and the 20th to make sure as many families have seen those emails and are opening those emails. Gil, next slide. So quickly, this has been in a few presentations, so I just want to reiterate there were trailer bill language that came out when the governor signed the budget on June 30th. It required 180 school days. That's how many days that our kids go to school, each year. So this did not change. That was suspended at the end of last year, and that's why we had a Friday kind of pause day for your children. That will not happen next year. They will be expected to be learning in whatever fashion that is, 5 days a week, starting August 26th. We did receive flexibility in instructional minutes. I'm going to go into that a little bit more in the slides, but for the most part, the minimum number of minutes per day is 240. So that's 4 hours of instruction. That's minimum. It's 10 minutes less for 1st through 3rd grade. So it's not a whole lot different. But for kindergarten, it's actually 3 hours or 180 minutes. So there is that flexibility in instructional minutes that we have to work with. There are requirements for distance learning. In addition to these requirements, our instructional committee has been coming up with their own guidelines for teachers and for students and parents. And you will see those in the communication next Wednesday, that if you're selecting distance learning, what you are what you're agreeing to, but you're also going to see what then the expectations are on what you will receive. For example, one of those things is that the model that we have is that in the days of school where we're going to be in learning, and our proposal is that live learning is 4 days a week. The teacher will have live instruction. It will not be asynchronous. There will be instruction by the teacher on a daily basis in distance learning. That's per this trailer bill. We also will have requirements for your child to actually participate and be doing the work. So we're going to have to have a plan in place per the trail bill language that if your child is absent for 3 consecutive days, which that would mean not turning in and attending to those lessons, then we've got to reach out to you and have a talk, and maybe that's not the right structure for you. We can't lose kids. We can't have kids think that because they're distance learning that they're going to wait until the week before grades and open up Google Classroom for the first time and start to do work. It's not how this will work. Kids are expected to be doing what they need to be doing from home on a daily basis. And there is a state emphasis to encourage students to return to school. We know that students learn best face-to-face with their teachers, And that's why we are planning for a blended learning model. Gil, next. So there were a lot of questions, and these are the two models that I'm going to talk about. But Gil, will you just flip forward to the next slide? There were a lot of questions about it. What does it look like if I pick, distance learning? As I said, they will be at home 5 days a week learning. They will be taught by TUSD credentialed teachers. This means that an elementary school student will receive a teacher, one teacher that will be your distance learning, teacher. It means that your middle and high schools will receive 6 teachers. And we think that this is the right way to go. They will be taught live. They will be instructed with those teachers 4 days a week synchronously. 1 day a week will be asynchronous, and there may be other things that happen on that 5th day of instruction that your kids will do. We think that this is important, and it kind of goes into the last bullet. Many of our districts, and they're actually struggling, surrounding districts, bought a packaged curriculum. Our teachers, when they reviewed that, were not impressed. They think they can do better. They know they can do better. It seemed to be at a very low level. We call it DOK, depth of knowledge, level 1. It's the lowest basic, in Bloom's taxonomy kind of levels of programs. And so we did not want to go with a packaged curriculum and have our teachers try to assist kids as they go through somebody else's, some other platform's curriculum. So our recommendation is that we're going to do it ourselves. There were some clarifying questions. So for elementary school, and I think we've mentioned, they will be included in school events. They will be tied to their school. It is quite possible, and I want everyone to know though that we can't tell you who your kid is going to have as a teacher or what it will exactly look like until we start designing those class lists and those master schedules. We need to know who is picking which model. And so it is quite possible at the elementary level that you may have a distance learning teacher that is not from the school where your child's homeschool is. And that's okay. We don't want to have a distance learning teacher that is going to be in charge of a TK, K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't think that is instructionally good for your kids. We want to make sure that at best, it's a teacher that's only teaching one grade level. It may be a combination of a 4-5 kind of a piece. And so it's very possible we're going to try to look at it by quadrants, that a Lincoln Elementary student might be being taught by a Yukon Elementary teacher. They are not Yukon kids though. They're Lincoln Elementary kids. They will be still enrolled in Lincoln Elementary School. It will be the Lincoln Elementary School principal shooting you out emails, the counselors, everything else that you will be doing. The only difference is the teacher logging on to instruct your child will be a teacher from a different site. So that's at the elementary level. At the secondary level and middle school, a little bit in the middle. We think that the larger the student body, the more availability of having teachers from that site. So middle schools are a little larger than our elementary schools for the most part. They're working at the same thing by quadrant. And it all depends on how many kids sign up for what classes. And so we want to individualize this for your children as much as possible. And if we were to make it simple, we could just say every 6th grader's got to take these classes. But we know that there are elective options and that there are different math options, and there's just different options that kids have that we don't want to restrict their choice. We do know that at the secondary level that there may be elective options that we cannot do in distance learning. For example, we're not sure that you can do foods from home while over a distance learning call. There will be electives that you can have, but there may be some limitations. Some lab career tech ed courses at the high school, very similar to the colleges and universities are dealing with right now. where some classes are much easier to be online and other classes cannot be online. So there may be some limitations with electives, but we're going to make sure that all graduation requirements, all core instruction, all honors and AP, courses to our that we will be able to maximize the schedule that your child has already scheduled and registered for. Now, I want to clarify, because there were a lot of questions and I think it's for secondary, of will a teacher only be a distance learning teacher, or will they be part of a blended learning model? And that answer is it could be both. And I want to hope this makes sense. I'm going to use a 9th grade student as an example. There may be 27 or 35 kids at a 9th grade in a school that are going to be in 9th grade English. And so a teacher will be assigned a distance learning section for 9th grade English. Very possible. We're going to try to keep high school kids with high school teachers from that school whenever possible. Again, with 2,000 students at a school, greater chance for that happening. Your child could, though, be in an advanced placement, social studies course, AP Euro, that there's only 5 students that are in that class that have chosen distance learning. We're not going to be able to provide a teacher for 5 students. We aren't given budget funding from the state on a 5-to-1 ratio. So it's possible that your kids may be at home, but is part of that class every day that's meeting live. That teacher might choose to live stream those kids into that section, where if that makes sense. We just don't know yet. The schools can't start designing those master schedules and making sure what works for each of these students until they know what those selections are. And I know in some cases, some of our high school principals we call them singlets, meaning there's only one class at that school. And that's where we think that some of this, creative scheduling is going to have to occur. As again, we don't want to be telling kids that they can't take a class, because we can't make it work. So we're going to try to make everything work. Our principals, I think, are even reaching out to some of those kids ahead of time saying, what do you think you're picking? And I know I heard of an AP teacher, because there's summer work, that was already having back and forth communications with their students. So I know I talked a lot about that, but there really were a lot of questions about what is it going to look like. Next slide, Gil. And at the elementary level, we actually are building our own platform. And this is just a landing page for elementary school. This is not in 612, because this is for one teacher and a kid, not for six different classrooms and all of the different variances of your kids' schedules. So this is just what it would look like as a snapshot. You see over in the bottom left-hand corner that they would click on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. You see on the bottom right-hand corner that there's a Tuesday there for English language arts. If you look carefully at the top, there's 4 little icons on each of the days of the week, and those represent English, math, science, and social studies. And then so they would click, and then there's curriculum here that will allow someone who wants to homeschool their kid to actually do a lot of this on their own. But it will be up to the teacher to then the distance learning teacher that's assigned what they're gonna teach synchronously or live with your child, help them through this. But then it also allows that asynchronous time in your kid to be able to do work on their own, to try to help and be as flexible for families as possible. The other reason why we were working on this, and there were also a lot of questions about moving back and forth, but during and I'm actually, let's go to the next slide, Gil, and I'll start talking about this. But in a blended learning model, in elementary school, kids are going to be in school about 2.5 hours a day, if it is the AM/PM model. If it is the AM/PM model, that means that there's about 90 minutes of asynchronous time or learn from home. So it is our plan that the model that I just showed you on the previous slide would be the same model if you're distance learning the whole time, or that teachers would use that same curriculum to assign the kids for their 90 minutes of asynchronous time. So for example, and I'm making this up, but if I'm a third grade teacher and I've met my kids at the blended learning option, so they're going to be in school half the time, work from home half the time. And in the beginning of school, and I'm really wanting to maybe double dose that English language arts. So I'm going to be instructing in that, but when they either in the morning before they come to school or after they're in my AM session and they go home for PM school, I assign them additional English language arts because I want to double dose that, and I want to get that reading comprehension caught up and ready to go, you know, as much as possible. I may then see that I think we need a little math work, and so I might do that. I might decide that for the first quarter, I'm not going to do social studies and I'm going to have that be asynchronous, and that's the, you know, so what we're hoping is that this gives teachers the flexibility to not be creating separate lessons while they're teaching all day. And then and it also will give people the same platforms. So if indeed we can return to normal and have class be 5 days a week, the same learning structure has been learned. There's less variance. You know, we learned a lot from March to June, and we want to make sure that there's as much consistency as possible, especially when your distance learning child might not be a teacher from their own school. We need to ensure that what's happening in kindergarten at Edison Elementary is happening in kindergarten at Riviera Elementary. And so creating this platform will help with that consistency, you know, moving forward. We're just starting to talk about that 6-12. There's been a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. We're not going to have this same platform, but that consistency in those conversations about what's going to be taught are starting to happen. We just need to or will be happening as soon as we know who those teachers are, and we're going to ensure that they are meeting across schools if they're going to be sharing kids. So in this blended learning model, then they're going to be into 2 cohorts. As I said, our recommendation at this time is that elementary students come 4 days a week, either in the morning or in the afternoon, waiting for the board action on that on Monday night. Our recommendation is that secondary students go alternate day. We know those are that this is the instruction committee's recommendation. Alternate day at this time would look like kids would come on Mondays and Thursdays and have all 6 of their classes. They would go on Tuesdays and Fridays and be in all of their classes. Everybody would, K-12, would be home on Wednesdays for that asynchronous time. That allows for those professional developments to happen. That allows for those PLCs, as you know that term by now, professional learning communities, to happen, especially between the teachers that are sharing kids among schools. So we need that time so they can talk, so we can make sure that they're all on the same page. But it's also going to allow for the 4th grade teacher or the 7th grade, you know, social studies teacher, that they can actually log and bring the 2 cohorts together and do a midweek check-in and do a short check-in, you know, via Zoom, and actually, you know, see their kids and answer some questions. And that's when the counselors can actually bring a cohort together and do some of the social emotional work. We are working hard that when kids are face-to-face with their teachers, that we're not pulling them out of that time. And so we want to maximize that instructional time so that Wednesday can also be utilized for that. Teachers have also said, this may be getting a little bit in the weeds, but you know, we do a lot of group work. We want kids to talk to each other. And we put them in small groups because we know the smaller the groups, that the more likely that that kids are going to talk. Well, you can't put them in small groups because then they won't be socially distanced. And so having that everybody off on a Wednesday will allow a teacher to actually do that and have breakout groups, so you can have those discussions that can happen that might not be able to happen in a larger classroom. Okay, Gil, next slide. So, and I'm gonna kind of and I've already kind of mentioned this, that after lots and lots and lots of discussion, the elementary schools feel very strongly that they need to see kids, you know, every single day as much as possible. Instead of, you know, every other day and not having full days without kids. They don't think that kids can manage a lot of full day instruction on their own. Secondary kids feel that the older kids can manage more instruction on their own, and really think that the model, especially the matriculation or articulation of our 8th graders, we have a robust, you know, honors program where kids are taking 9th grade classes, and in an AM PM model, that's huge. You know, it's very difficult to get kids bussed back and forth and not have them missing other classes and all of that kind of a thing. And our high school teachers especially think that when you're only there for half a day, that a lot of kids will not come to school because it's only 3 classes or it's only half the, and so modeling a full day of instruction, they think it will be better engagement for the students. And finally, Gil, last slide. There will be more information on this. I think it's a little bit premature to talk about a lot of this, but there is a recommendation. We have moderate severe special education classes. We have self-contained, better word for it. And our recommendation, most of those classes are smaller anyway. Most of those classes already can social distance in themselves. So our recommendation is that they would come full-time and have that normalcy as much as possible. Our resource or learning center special education students will be part of choosing which model that they want. And then we're working on how to not pull them out of that class time. This is still kind of work in progress of what can happen on those asynchronous days. Some of our counselors and our speech pathologists have even noticed that they actually do quite well via a Google Meets or a Zoom. Sometimes in counseling, kids actually feel more comfortable discussing, you know, from their comforts at home. So what kind of services can we provide when they're not, you know, not in their class? GATE, English learners, and others will be, differentiation will be provided in both models. We do need to tell you though, there will be access to some specialists limited in the distance learning model. We do have, and we're just not sure yet. You know, we do have intervention teachers at our school that we're not sure what kind of access, distance learning, and coordination between schools and what grade level they are and what kind of access you will have in distance learning. We'll try, but we do want to kind of let you know that there will be some limited access to some of the programs that we have at our schools. And one of the reasons why we have a firm ending time today is that we've got a committee that is doing this last bullet. We're looking at how we can extend learning time for you know, other groups of students. And so that's, I can't really say even more than that, but we did receive something called learning loss mitigation funds. And so based on a screening tool that we're going to use at the beginning of the year, how do we provide some of that intervention for kids during the time that they're not already in class? So we're going to be meeting and talking about that just after this meeting. Hey, Gil. And that ends that. And so we're going to ask Gil at this time to, so thank you for bearing with us. I know it was longer than as I went through and counted, believe it or not, I think we covered about 250 people's questions in that presentation. So hopefully we're able to cover a lot of the questions that came up, and asking you to please ask questions about things that need clarification or that were questions that you had that we weren't able to get into the presentation.
And Katie, if I can just jump in really quick. I know that, you know, we increased from capacity 100 up to 500 on this account. And, you know, there's much more interest beyond that. And just wanted to let you know, as parents, I got it, both an email and a text. We sent it out as soon as we could to let people know that we we'll be sending out a recording of this meeting as soon as we can this afternoon. And also please communicate with others out there that, you know, we're doing everything we can to provide as many opportunities to educate and inform and listen to all parents, all of our entire community. And so we know this is a very important topic, and we are making every effort, and will continue to refine and improve upon that access. But at 500 here, it's a great thing. We had over, I think, 300 yesterday for our school board workshop. And so really trying to take advantage of the tools available to us, and actually broader participation via the technology than we've received in any other time in the history of this district, for sure, as far as input and reach. So please continue to let folks know that we are here to listen and take your input and answer questions.
Okay, so what I'll do is I will call on your name, and we'll unmute you so that you can speak and ask your question. First up, your name is COVID-19 Immunity Plan. So go ahead, you are on the line. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question. No, I'll move on to the next person. I will spell it out. Or Agkoliander, Agkoliander.
I don't have a question.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you have a question, just go ahead and click the raised hand button. Next person, we have Suin, S-U, Sue, I-N-C. No question. Okay. All right, how about Sabrina White?
Hi, thank you for your time. So I had a couple questions. My son will be in kindergarten, and I'm wondering on the learning model for full online, I know it says it's about 3 hours or 2.5 hours of time. Now, do we know, is that full 3 hours live? Do we have kind of any idea? Because he would be in daycare, and I do need to let them know how long he will need to be online, stuff like that. You might not have that information yet, so I understand, but that would be good to kind of get sooner than later, so we can let our other caretakers let them know what we need as far as coverage on online. And then also the same with, even if they are doing the AM, PM with going to school, will they need to be online live, or would it be just on their own terms if they are attending school part of the day? My other question is, and again, this is towards kindergartners, do we need to start looking towards Chromebooks for them, or are iPads okay for this logging in and live streaming? And then if they do the AM, PM, or any like actual in-time school time, and I know definitely has to be 180 days, if there are breakouts, do we then go to online, or do you start to do year-round because you have to hit that 180 days? So that's another question I had. And then last, some of us that do have to have childcare, our childcare is not necessarily close to where the homeschool is, and childcares are willing, some of them, to pick up and drop off before and after school. So will we have another possible open enrollment option for working parents that have no other option and their child has to be somewhere no matter what, to possibly for 1 year move to a different homeschool that's closer to their childcare? And then last question is, and you might not have this answer either, is what does the lunch or snack time look like? Is there going to be playing available, or is it just eat and then get back into class and social distancing once again? So yeah, those are all my questions.
Okay, so I'm going to try to tackle, and then I'm going to ask Gil to pop in on one of them. And then if we didn't get to, if I didn't remember everything that you said, help me out. But I think lunch, that was the easier one. If it is the AM PM model, there actually is no lunch.
Got it.
Kids would either be, and then that nutritional services then will have a plan for allowing you to buy lunch and take it home with you. Free and reduced lunch kids will be given their lunch to take home with them in the AM. PM kids would actually have the free and reduced lunch kids, we believe, at the end of the day going home would be given their box lunch for them to have for the next day. And so there actually wouldn't be, but there will be food, what do they call them? POS, point of sale, places for then you to buy something and take it off campus.
Got it.
So there wouldn't be lunch. Really good question about, so AM, PM, if your child would be assigned, like say to PM, and they would be in school from approximately, let's say 12:30 to 3:30 would be when they would be in school. And actually that's too long, 1 to 3:30 ish. Just, we don't have the exact times yet. We're trying to work on what the model will be and then kind of put the times together. It's approximate, well, for kindergarten, it's approximately an extra 30 minutes of asynchronous work. So there'll be a lot less asynchronous work for kindergarten. For every other grade level, it's about 90 minutes. So if you're in the PM section, you would assume that there's 90 minutes of doing something, but specific to kindergarten, it's very little asynchronously. Now, if your child is in the hybrid model, and then we have to go to virtual like we did this year in March, then it's possible that everybody would go to the same model. They're still looking at that. In fact, we've got a 2 o'clock meeting today for that committee to come with their recommendation. They're working on, with the blended learning model, what does that look like if it then has to go home? And so I don't have all of that specificity yet, but it would still be the same number of days. So if we would still, if the blended learning model, we're not going to close school and not teach them. So
got it.
Okay. And then,
so it would end up being online versus going into like a year-round thing.
Yes.
Got
correct.
it. Okay.
Correct. And then I think you also asked, Chromebook, iPad. I mean, we utilize Chromebooks. If your child can, manipulate the assignments of an iPad, Mr. Murray, I think that works in kindergarten.
Yeah, that would work in kindergarten. And even our students, currently use Chromebooks at the kindergarten and first grade level. At that age, they're still developing their fine motor skills. So sometimes a touch tablet is a little easier. But they adapt pretty quickly once you get a keyboard and buttons in front of them. So from a cost perspective, if you're purchasing on your own, the Chromebooks tend to be a little more inexpensive than an iPad, for example.
Got it. And then with the Chromebook, they most likely in first grade, they're going to have that again anyways. So maybe that is the best way for kindergartners to go. Yeah,
and again, we've invested quite a bit in the district with our bond money in purchasing Chromebooks. So that's what's prevalent here in Torrance.
Got it.
That device.
And I think I think it was your last question that was about, I know on August 10th, you would know, like if you pick blended learning, but if it's distance, I think we've answered that one. But if you're picking distance learning, it all depends on when the teacher gets assigned and how they're organizing that day. And so the timing of those, 180 kindergarten minutes, I would assume it would be in the morning, but I don't know that I can answer that question yet. Because the teacher may want to break it up and have smaller groups of kids than try to have 27 kindergartners all at once. So it may be that they can, that they would be synchronous and live instruction for smaller groups of kids throughout the day. And that you would maybe have a little bit more flexibility in what works best for you. It just really is contingent on the teacher and the kids and their needs.
Okay, and then my last question was regarding the changing of schools. If we do pick,
Oh, yeah,
how does
and
it work?
open enrollment, no, but we do something called a boundary waiver, and we do that for a year if there's an extenuating circumstance. Mr. Pearson's online and taking notes. I see him. He's in charge of our student services, and we realize that we may have to make, do some permissibility movements, as long as there's room at that school.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So I would just maybe contact him or contact.
I
or do
would
you-
actually, I mean, my recommendation would actually be to start with your homeschool and have them kind of do some of that background, legwork,
Okay.
with
May I
Mr.
also suggest, if possible, that you work with the daycare provider. They're going to be hopefully more flexible with regard to pickup points, et cetera. And so to also continue to work with them and with the hope that they would be accommodating as well.
Yeah, they have two schools that are nearby that they could walk to pick up, but they don't drive.
Got
Yeah,
it.
so, okay. I'll check and see if it's a possibility. And I think that's all of my questions. So I really do appreciate your guys' help. You guys are doing an awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I've got next Larissa Seitz.
Hi, thank you so much.
Sure, go ahead.
So I just have a very quick question for you. I have 2 children in elementary, and I was pushing more towards the blended, virtual and actual brick and mortar. But my question is now that I'm seeing that it's a and B, where it's going to be an AM, PM, are we allowed to at some point go ahead and change that? I just feel like my kids, once I bring them home from school, if they're AM, they're going to be like, okay, well, we want to just hang out and relax for a minute. You know what I mean? So I don't know if they're going to get the same full time that they need if it's, if I have to split it up between an AM and PM.
So in that model, and that's the recommendation, I want to keep reminding everyone, the board will take action on what the models looks like on Monday night. So it's not been decided. That's the recommendation from the elementary instruction committee at this point. But but I will say that the teacher, so your decision, of course, right? The teachers that have been having this depth of conversations, some of them have been in 3 different meetings every week helping us with this. Remember that now there's only going to be half as many kids in the class, and they actually are, without having to, if you've ever been volunteering in school and the time it takes kids to line up and walk into the classroom from flag assembly and line up and walk out to recess and line up, and when you take all that time away, and lunch and getting ready for lunch and getting their food and all of that stuff, and with half as many kids in the classroom, they actually think that they're going to get a heck of a lot of instruction done with half as many kids, and without the going back and forth, of the different things that they do throughout the day. So they're actually looking forward to seeing the depth of instruction that they're going to get to, even if it's in a shorter amount of time.
Right. And I feel like that the kids will do great. I agree with the teachers 100%. I bet that they will get a lot more done. And I agree with that part, with half the amount of students in the class. My worry is when I bring them home and I say to my, 3rd and 4th grader now, okay, you still have an hour's worth of work we got to do at home. You know what I mean? As to where I feel like, in my own opinion, I feel like the every other day or 2 days a week for more time would give them more time to actually focus and learn. Because, we all have kids. And so when you bring the kids home from school, they want to kind of hang out. They want to have some snacks. They want to do something else. And then to get them motivated again to complete the minutes that they have to have per day, it just seems a little bit tricky to me. So that's why I just didn't know if I decide if it's the AM PM and I decide to put them in, am I able to say no, it's not going to work for us because I don't feel like they're getting what they need, and then go to full virtual?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it really, we cannot promise that. It depends on space available at that time with,
Right.
and going both ways. You know, we've had that question for, you know, when it's distance learning and my kids don't like that and they want to come back and see their
Right.
friends. And it all depends on the space availability, because we are going to be limited to the social distancing. And,
Right.
and so we can't promise that. So we will try to be as flexible as we can. But we want you to really kind of, as you are, sounds like you really are, studying all of those options before you make that decision.
Right. And then one last quick question on that. Because I have 2 kids, are we going to try to put them on the same schedule?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because then, you know, I mean, you still got to work. So then it's like, do I tell them I work, I'm going to be, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, totally.
so, okay.
I was gonna say, unless you don't want them on the same schedule. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, keeping families on the same schedule within elementary and secondary, I think, is important.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, I've got Julie YD.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a question regarding the distance learning model. I'm not sure how feasible this is, but I'm wondering if there's any way to have sort of a demo or a little preview of what the platform looks like that's being developed. Just as an example, maybe doing a brief screen recording of someone clicking through the various sections and viewing some of the instructional media that's going to be used. I know that's asking a lot, but I think it'll help a lot of parents kind of wrap their minds around whether they feel that the virtual learning model is worth the loss that they would be experiencing by not putting their kids in the blended model.
No, you know what? That's an excellent opinion. We have a 3rd grade 6-week unit completed already. And I think as long as we don't have K through 5 all done, but if it would be 1 grade level and letting you see 1 unit, I think we absolutely, I already got like a 30-minute commercial, if you will, and I think they could actually do that, record and have it posted. That's a great idea. I think we can do that ahead of the decision. Thank you for the idea.
Okay, great. Yeah, that would be absolutely instrumental for me in making a decision, because I think, well, I have 3 kids. I have 1 going into kinder, 1 going into 3rd, and I have a middle schooler. So they all respond differently to the virtual learning, you know, depending on their developmental level. But the problem that I struggled with my older son is that a lot of the lessons were not custom. I don't know what the better terminology is to use, but it was basically saying, okay, go to YouTube and watch this video, go to Khan Academy and watch this math lesson.
Yeah.
And for my son, who was in accelerated math, he had a really hard time learning in that way. And I just kept saying over and over to myself, oh my goodness, if he would have had access to live instruction from his teacher, which at the time it was just too much because there was too much change going on. So I understand that it wasn't possible, but he struggled a lot just because he was having to learn by himself using YouTube and Khan Academy, and things that I wasn't able to help him with, unfortunately. I'm not as talented in math as he is, but we struggled with that aspect. So it would be really nice to kind of get a peek into what that will look like. So thank you so much.
Sure.
And then I had another question regarding a previous meeting that I had listened in on this week. And I recall hearing that kids in middle and high school may be asked to disinfect or wipe down their own desks and chairs in between classes. And I understand that it's really difficult to ask teachers to do these things in such a short period of time between classes. But I just wanted to raise my concern and express that I'm worried about this, asking middle schoolers to be responsible for wiping down the desks and seats that they sit in. I don't know if they'd also be responsible for wiping down high use touch points. But I'm just wondering if there are any other alternatives to this, because as a parent, I would be concerned. And those are all the questions I have.
I can talk to that a bit. No, we wouldn't require students to clean up after themselves as far as, especially using any disinfectant, because they're not allowed to use a disinfectant, right? Um, no, we wouldn't require the students to do that.
So that would be something that the teacher would do between classes, because the time period in between classes is so short during passing period. And I'm just wondering how that logistically would work out in real life. I know theoretically, you know, you can say, oh, you know, we'll have the teachers wipe everything down and wipe down all the touch points in the classroom, but it's really difficult. I mean, that's a lot to ask of a teacher. So I just wanted to, I know that things are still pending, you know, based on what guidelines are going to be released, but just wanted to share that that level of concern that I do have for my middle schoolers. I'm less concerned about the elementary school. I'm more concerned about the passing periods for the older kids.
Thank you. Yeah, and we've been discussing we've been discussing that piece quite a bit here. So we'll have more guidance later on.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have John Casey up next. Go ahead, John, if you're still with us. John Casey, there you go. We see you. Go ahead, John. John, do you have a question? Hello? No, I don't think John. Okay. I will put John on hold. About Pete McKellar?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Pete.
Hi, I just have one quick question. Say we do the blended learning option and a month in, we just don't feel comfortable with it. Maybe numbers have spiked, or can we go to the distance learning option? I can understand not going the other way because of numbers in the classroom, but opting out. That's my only question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. It works both ways because we've got, you know, contractual class maximums for our teachers. So you know, we hope to be as flexible as possible, but it really depends on whether there's availability at that grade level or in those classes.
All right, next I have Kay Quinn.
Yes, hi, thank you. Two quick questions. I'm assuming if by some miracle they come up with a vaccine and the CDC okay school again, if we choose the online, will you guys be going back to normal school where we can all just kind of go back to how it was set up, even if we are online, or is it strictly no matter what that we're sticking to this for the year? And my one other question is, my daughter's in high school and plays basketball. If we do online and for some reason they do start athletics again, will she be able to participate?
Yeah, great question. So the second question, absolutely.
Okay.
If you choose distance learning and we are allowed and able and authorized to do those activities, your daughter can participate. So,
okay.
And so bless you, we hope that there's going to be a vaccine and we can return to normal. And I think that's my 2 o'clock meeting this afternoon is we're hearing the elementary and secondary committees, you know, discussion about how we make that happen. We're taking whichever model that we may be on and seeing how it works if we're in phase 1, which means that's that safer at home, all the way to stage 4, which means we can go back, you know, without any restrictions. And so if that happens and it's in a break of time, like at a semester or a trimester, where we can kind of undo and redistribute, we do want to commit to families that want distance learning for the year, though, that we will allow them to continue that distance learning for the year. We don't want to force somebody. But yeah, if we're able to be more flexible and open that up, we will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Jason Zarkusin.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Jason.
Okay. All right. So I actually have several questions. I'm just going to do one at a time, if that's okay.
Sure.
How will we know that parents are sending their kids to school? How will we know that parents aren't sending their school sick? It's a fact of life that parents get busier and it's easier for them to send their kids to school out of a lack of ability to provide care if they are sick. What are the secondary and tertiary stopgaps for those types of situations?
John, do you want to?
You want to take that one, John?
Well, I think my thought is that we're focusing on what we can control. And so in saying that, ensuring that students are wearing face coverings, teachers are wearing face coverings, that we're doing our disinfecting and our cleaning, we're enforcing the social distancing. And really, if we focus on what we have control over, while in addition to that, really doing our best to communicate the importance of parents following the guidelines that have been given to us, that we will have compliance. And then, but again, ensuring that when kids do come onto campus, if they're wearing face coverings, and we're doing a good job of disinfecting and enforcing the social distancing, hopefully we won't get to that point where someone tests positive. And if so, we have contingency plans that we would move forward with.
Okay. And so what if a kid starts feeling ill during the school day? Sometimes a kid may feel fine, when they wake up, but then start feeling sick during the day. Is there going to be protocol for them to advise somebody, or?
Yes, sir. We do have a plan that's part of our contingency planning. First and foremost, separating those who are not feeling well from those who may just need a Band-Aid or have another upset tummy. So having separate rooms for those who potentially could be showing symptoms or signs of COVID, having a separate area, whether it's outside in a tenting area or whether it's with the installation of a curtain that would separate that student. Obviously putting a mask on or a face covering on immediately if the student is showing signs. We have a phenomenal group of nurses, LVNs, and health assistants who have been part of these committees and who are working with and researching with the guidance from the CDC and the Department of Public Health to ensure that we're putting forth the steps in case somebody is showing signs or symptoms of COVID.
Okay. All right. So this is going to be a contentious one. So some parents have differing beliefs on wearing masks. How are kids going to be held accountable if they remove their masks, or if kids choose not to wear a mask because their parents don't hold the same beliefs as others? What about young kids who touch their faces and then, take off their masks? And then will mask wear include wearing the masks over the nose? And will kids be held accountable for that?
Yes.
Absolutely. So the mask wearing includes over the nose and the mouth. That's if wearing it underneath the nose is not wearing a mask. So, and that's why we're going to encourage, and there'll be communication out to ask parents to start working with their children if they're not already doing so. We had a neighboring district opened a preschool program on Monday, and they reported 100% compliance, and that they had worked for 3 weeks ahead of time with their families. It isn't an option to not comply with the guidance that we're being given. And so if a parent doesn't, chooses to not abide by that, then maybe they need to not choose the option to return to school.
Okay. There's going to be a lot of trust between parents. How will parents be held accountable if their kid is sick or whatever? Can parents request who they want their child to be in a cohort with? So for example, some parents know other parents of children, they're comfortable with those people. Could they be matched up with them rather than just without consultation of parents?
I don't think we can promise that. I think we have to communicate really well what our expectations are with our families. And then as Mr. Pearson said, keeping the 6 feet apart and the mask wearing on all day, is the things that we can control. And then we're just going to focus on the enforcement of those things that we can control.
Can I make a comment here?
Of course.
That's a great question. And I think what's important here is to emphasize that we're all in this together. However, with that being said, I think that you have to come with the expectation that there are going to be parents who will not abide. Schools are known for people coming to school with the flu, people coming with a cold, whatever it may be. And I think that we're going to do the best that we can to ensure message, make sure the kids that are there, we're going to do everything that we can. And that call it's up to all of us together, that we work together, understand that we're in this together, that we can't think about ourselves, but we got to think about the community that's around us. And I know that there are going to be compromising positions where people are going to say, I can't be here. I got to send my kid to school because I got to go to work.
Right.
The thing is, you have to make that sacrifice for the sake of the greater good. And I think that we're going to implore all our parents to do that for the sake of the district. Because again, your kid gets another kid infected, then we have to shut the whole school down, and that doesn't help anybody, right? At the end of the day, you're just gonna just pay the cost later on. And so it's important that we send out that message.
Okay, thank you for that. Are teachers in small cohorts or cross-pollinating?
So only the pod of the teacher and the students.
Did you hear that?
No.
Are teachers in small cohorts? I got an elementary, so first grader, or are they cross-pollinating across other?
Meaning, are the teachers in the same cohort that the kids are in, or are they are the teachers' cohorts matched up to the kids' cohorts, or does every teacher have more than one cohort of kids that they're teaching?
No, a teacher will have in elementary school, they will have 27 kids divided into 2 cohorts. So they'll either be teaching AM and PM or alternate day. So they will have 2 cohorts of kids.
So if a kid in one of their cohorts is impacted or infected, then both cohorts ultimately are impacted in terms of the quarantine. Is that how that will work?
Well, and that's what we're madly waiting in the orders for.
Got it.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple more. I'm sorry. Can we have our kids wear a shield if we feel more comfortable with that? Is there any sort of ruling on that as far as like if the kid falls and they hurt, like they get a cut or whatever? I mean, is there what if we want to do something more than just the mask? Is that permissible?
Oh, so again, I mean, I really apologize, and I know it's not, us, we're, waiting on these orders, but
okay, all right.
We did hear, but I have a little bit of an answer. We did hear from our medical professionals at our county office of ed. We do a weekly kind of update that I think if you wanted to provide more, that would be permissible, but that the face shield in lieu of cloth.
No, both. It would be both.
Would be
yeah.
permissible. It's very few exceptions that it's not going to be an option of what kind of face covering to wear unless there's some, unless there's an exception. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. And what if parents aren't happy with the online instruction?
You talk to your school's principal.
Okay.
Just like
Fair
if you
enough.
weren't happy about something going on in, with the teacher, well, actually the best thing is you start with that teacher and I mean, that's actually the first thing. So forgive me. I misspoke.
Teacher.
The first thing that you do is because our teachers want to do a good job. And so if there's something not working and, and you talk it out and see what those things are so that they can best, meet your needs. I mean, that's always the best and first place to start.
Okay. And then the last question is, we used to have a daycare provider come pick our child up. Mm-hmm. Is that still going to be permissible? Given that, I mean, so like, like we used to just have her pick her up and then take her for the day while we were working.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to be allowed to have other people besides parents pick up our child?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Provided
That's it.
they're wearing a mask.
Okay. Yeah. No, I got it. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're gonna take two more questions, and we apologize. We know this is that a lot of you still have questions. So we're gonna do two more questions, and then know that we're gonna do this again with little to no presentation next week, so we can offer the entire time for Q&A. If there are questions that we can answer in an email, some of these are not hard. You can also send me an email, and I will try my best to communicate and answer some of your questions via email as well. So I apologize, we're not going to get to everybody's questions. So two more, Mr. Mora.
Okay. I have Lily Nelson.
I think I know the answer, but is there going to be any recess at all for the kids with masks and things? There's just no playground time. They show up 90 minutes instruction and they leave.
No. So they're actually going to show up for, if it's an AM PM model, they'll actually be there for about 2.5 hours. So, and there won't be recess in the same way that we know it, where, first, second, and third graders all go out and run amok all at the same time. But teachers will we want to keep kids in that cohort. So teachers will take those kids out to that recess, awaiting the guidance, wanting, and we're really working, and we're working with we've got a PE committee right now working on what are those things, because, you can't kick a ball back and forth and not touch it and be, so we're working on what those recess guidelines will be, but kids will get PE and we'll get recess.
Okay, and then will there be a time to give a preference, first preference, second preference, AM, PM for elementary school, or will it just be assigned, or?
You can try, but it's, we need to, balance classes. There's a lot of things that go into the AM, PM, making sure that families are together, that have kids, at the school, and that we're balancing our classrooms so that they're going to be, we're able to instruct as best as possible. But we can't guarantee that we can get you into, an AM or a PM.
We appreciate all you guys planning.
Or alternate day, whichever model is chosen.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Last question, Mr. Mora.
Okay, I have a Julie. First name Julie here.
Hi, actually all of my questions were asked by the parents before me, so thank you.
Okay, well then we'll take one more, Mr. Mora.
Sure.
I thought we were going to ask
Lindsay.
Yes, hello. Thank you. I was just concerned about the on-site cleaning. I kind of feel like as it is, the janitors aren't really able to keep up with thorough cleaning. And I know you mentioned they were only going to be doing it, well, at minimum once a day. Is there any way that they'd be able to increase that more? And then I had some questions just in general. Will you guys be now finally allowing toilet seat covers? And then a couple other ones. I wanted to know if the classroom doors and the windows are going to be staying open. And also regarding the HVAC, it was like briefly touched upon. Do you know roughly how much outside air is being brought into the units? Also, what is the HEPA MERV filter rating, and how often are the cooling coils cleaned?
Okay, let me cover all of that. Let's start with the HVAC. So 18% of our schools have AC units, and most of those are in our portable classrooms.
Okay.
The filters that are in them are, I don't know the MERV rating, not being an HVAC engineer, but from what I've learned so far, our filters are 3 to 5 micron filters, and those are changed out 3 times a year. The dampeners allow 20% of fresh air into the classroom.
Okay.
There's a portion of it that is circulated, right? The other 80%. some of the recommendations we've seen and some guidelines are to just allow the windows and doors to be open, and that'll be the majority of our classrooms because there is no AC. And we're looking at purchasing fans to allow for a better air circulation and flow, especially as it gets into the warmer months. As you know, it's going to be uncomfortable with our students and our teachers for a couple hours, 2.5 hours to have their masks on, and for our teachers to provide instruction. So we want to make sure that the airflow is good there. As far as toilet seat covers, that actually came up yesterday in our operations committee meeting, and we're looking to install toilet seat covers.
Great.
This has been a little, I want to say, hit and miss. Some schools are reporting that they have toilet seat covers in the bathrooms for the kids, and some are not. So we're doing an inventory now of toilet seat covers. And actually, we're doing a lot of inventory of all of our classrooms of things they need to make sure that the cleaning and disinfecting continues. As far as the cleaning and disinfecting, keep in mind the cleaning is going to be occurring all day long as the custodial crew moves throughout the schools and hitting the touch points, right? And like I think I mentioned that the disinfecting is a whole other process because you're using a germicide, and we need certified people to do disinfecting, which is why it is a concentrated effort to do this once. So trying to disinfect an entire school would be difficult within a 45-minute span. And this is based on some of the science that we've seen and where the guidelines are being written against, because most of transmission has been occurring through respiratory droplets. And per the CDC, there has been no documented case of contracting COVID-19 through a surface, right? So there's been, of all the infections we've seen so far, none of it has been contracted via a surface. So the regular, typical sanitation and cleaning of a desk between a passing period kind of aligns with the science that you're still okay in cleaning off dirt and grime and using still good cleaning sanitation agents to kill most germs, right? So that's why, and what we're expecting, from the county Department of Health is the requirement to at least disinfect at least once a day. Maybe it may be more. We're not sure until we get those guidelines this week, hopefully tomorrow, or maybe early next week, right? So again, the guidelines are trying to line up with what we know so far as far as this type of this virus.
And then I just, I'm sorry, one quick question too. Is there, I can't recall in the meeting, are we no longer allowing any shared pencils and things? My daughter's in elementary school and they have all kinds of shared crayons and everything else. So I just wanted to confirm on that. And then also, I don't think you touched on the cooling coils, how often they're cleaned. I know you mentioned the HVAC is done 3 times a year, but how about the cooling coils for the HVAC?
I don't know the answer to the cooling coils piece, but if you log in next week, I will try to find that answer.
Thank you.
I'll make a note.
But
As far as
Lindsay, the shared materials, every effort's going to be made to have teachers be the ones handing out those materials, and then having kids have their own to the greatest extent possible to limit that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Also, let me just add the importance of really.
Yeah, and
washing hands, keeping the face covering on, you know what I mean? And really just drilling that home, while at school, washing our hands, disinfecting, and not touching the face and keeping the face covering on, really drilling that home.
Yeah, I've done that. I'm just worried about the other kids. I'm paranoid, so she's got it down. Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. We know we didn't get to everybody's questions. I'm looking up, I've got 5 or 6 of you that have shot me an email already. And so I will work to get back to you on many of these things. I'm still seeing a lot of questions on things that we just can't answer yet. And a lot of them are on that contract tracing. We will get that information out to you as soon as we get orders from the LA County Department of Health. We just won't be able to answer those yet at those times. So you won't hear back from me on those questions because we won't have that up maybe next Thursday. Dr. Stowe, do you have anything that you want to add in as we close?
No, again, just, thank you for your time and interest in this. Obviously, as a parent, we're all concerned, and we want to make the right decision for our kids and our families. And it's been said a lot today about the LA Department of Public Health. If you saw the LA Times this morning, the top billing was Dr. Ferrer talking about schools and the possibility of students returning to school in August. And so, we are on top of it with regard to getting the latest information from the county, from the state, and communicating that through our school board and other, through parent groups and our employee associations. And so this is definitely a collective, collaborative effort on the part of a lot of people, and just want to reiterate to all of you parents and the whole community that what we saw from March 13th on was really something special here in Torrance, and I know that we will continue to refine and improve processes and instruction and support students because ultimately their academic, social, emotional, and physical well-being is what we're here for. And so we will continue to keep that as the main focus for moving forward. So thank you for your time, and look forward to other communications coming from the district.
Thanks, everybody.